Hi and welcome back to the channel and the first installment of the Early Bird Photo News and Thoughts. For a while I've been wanting to make some shorter, more easygoing videos where we can just talk about news or whatever else comes to mind. So if you enjoy this shorter format, make sure to let me know in the comments after watching this video. Guys, we have been wrong all along. We always thought camera gear is expensive, yet apparently it was too cheap. Because Canon and Nikon decided that a lot of their lenses needed to have a price increase. And for Canon, that's not only newer RF lenses, but also a lot of the older EF lenses like a 16 to 35 for instance have gotten a price increase. And worst of all, the one lens we always say is overpriced, the 100 to 500 RF, Canon actually thought it was too cheap. So it also is getting a $100 price increase in the US, and I'm afraid in most other countries that will translate to an increase of a few $100s extra. So not great news, but with inflation running high in a lot of countries, that's probably something we have to get used to, unfortunately. The other day I've been scrolling through Canon rumors and actually came across a very interesting section where it showed a few new patents Canon applied for. And they were for some very interesting wildlife and sports lenses. The first lens, I almost couldn't believe my eyes, was a 150 to 600mm lens. And to be honest, somehow I thought Canon would never actually start to make a lens like this, because for some reason they seem to have always avoided the kind of 200 to 600mm range. But Sony has a fantastic lens in that range, and now it looks like Nikon will also do a 200 to 600mm lens for their mirrorless cameras. So I would be very excited to see Canon to actually make a 150 to 600mm lens that will be wide open at f6.3 on the long lens. So it will not be like a super massive lens, rather sort of in the size and shape of those Tamron and Sigma lenses. But overall, at a decent price point and with good L-lens quality, I think this could be a fantastic lens and an amazing lens for a lot of wildlife photographers. And what I like the most about it, if it has good image quality, that it actually starts 150mm rather than at 200mm, because it gives you a little bit more flexibility on the lower and wider end. The other lenses that were mentioned in that was a 200 to 400, probably with a built-in extender. I mean, that's a lens we probably all expected Canon to make at some point for the RF mount. And then very interestingly also an RF f4 200 to 500mm zoom lens. And from what I've seen, this isn't the first rumor where Canon seems to think about abandoning the 2.8 300 and the f4 500mm prime lenses and gravitating towards making these more into zoom lenses. And to be honest, in the past I've always been a big fan of big prime lenses, but more and more lately I've been gravitating towards using this 100 to 500mm lens in the field, simply because it's so much more convenient to use. It's lighter, I can do handheld video, and it's just overall more fun to use. For instance, the other day I was in a rainforest. I knew it was going to be dark, but I had to go for like an extended walk, and so I decided, screw it, I'm just going to take the 100 to 500mm lens, and I actually got some nice images. I had to use pretty high ISO because of the aperture limitations, but all in all, even in a dark forest, I started to prefer a 100 to 500mm lens over a big 600mm prime lens, simply because it was so much more convenient to use. Let's be honest, who wouldn't want to have an amazing f4 200 to 500mm lens, maybe even with a 1.4 extender built in? I think that would be an amazing wildlife lens that would be great for photos and video. The only downside will probably be the price tag. So let me know in the comments, what do you think of these lenses, like 150 to 600 or 200 to 500 f4, maybe even with a built-in extender. I think that would be some very exciting lenses. And lastly, there was also quite an interesting lens, an f8 300 to 800mm lens. I know Sigma, I think in the past had a 300 to 800mm lens that was kind of popular with a few people, at least when I was living back in Germany, but I think the image quality of that lens, while it was okay, was never quite up to scratch when compared to like the bigger prime lenses. So if Canon could actually pull it off to build a relatively lightweight f8 300 to 800mm lens with good image quality and not a crazy price tag, I also think that could be quite an interesting lens for many people. The only question for me with that lens would be, is it a fixed f8 like the f11 lenses where you cannot actually change your aperture, or will it be a variable aperture lens where I can stop down to like f11 for instance? Because when it comes to filming, if you can't stop down at all, that's usually a little bit difficult. So I would prefer to see a lens that's not having a fixed aperture. If the rumored R7 might also come out with a 1.6 crop factor, and then you put on that 150 to 600 millimeter lens, that could be a really amazing combo for many people out there. Ever since I've moved to Queensland, I've also started to have trouble with my R5s overheating when filming just a YouTube video like this now. After 25 to let's say 35-40 minutes, usually the cameras shut down quite quickly. This is something that has never happened to me in Melbourne, and I'm not entirely sure why this is happening because the temperatures are not necessarily different, but the humidity is certainly higher. So I don't know if there's any expert out there. Does humidity actually affect the overheating as well? Or is it maybe just the size of this room that's a little bit smaller causing the cameras to overheat quicker? Anyways, I was really hoping that the R5C might be the solution for me, because on a few longer YouTube videos, I actually had to switch out my R5 cameras halfway through the filming to actually manage to finish the video, because I filmed like 2/3 of the video on one R5, then it overheated, so then I had to put on my other R5 to actually finish the video. It's not something that's really fun. I was really looking for a new solution. So when the R5C was announced, I was actually quite excited and I thought this could solve all my problems. However, when I started to look a little bit more deeply into it, there seemed to be a few issues that actually make this camera not really working for me. First of all, it seems to be identical to the R5 when it comes to taking photos, but it completely changed the whole video side of the camera, which is great if you're a videographer that usually works on like a gimbal, for instance, or you're doing a lot of filming of other people, for instance, like you're following people, your lens is on a gimbal, you're properly making movies. I think this will be a fantastic camera. However, for a hybrid shooter like me that often shoots like myself or birds in the field handheld, there were a few features on the R5C that were lacking that I was very disappointed about. First of all, it doesn't have IBIS, in-body image stabilization, which I think would cause me a lot of trouble in the field, because one of my favorite things to do at the moment is to grab the 100 to 500 millimeter lens, put on an R5, usually without the battery grip, and I have a really nice lightweight combo that I can just have with me in my backpack, and I can get nice stable footage handheld. And so I've gotten a lot of videos of nice birds that I would have never gotten if I had to use like a tripod or a gimbal, for instance. So while the camera will offer some better electronic stabilization, I still think the lack of an IBIS would make it a lot more difficult for me in the field to do the handheld videos. So it's the first thing I was a little bit concerned about. And then secondly, from what I've seen, because the camera now has the Cinema Line video menu, there doesn't seem to be animal or bird's eye tracking in the video mode. And that's another thing that I can basically not live without when doing handheld video of birds, because I can't really manual focus when I'm trying to follow a bird handheld. So I'm really relying on the camera to pick the bird, me holding it still, and then slowly following the bird around. So no IBIS, no bird's eye tracking seem to be two big deal breakers for me, along with apparently not as good weather sealing, although there seems to be different opinion on it, how good it actually is. So that might be good enough, but at a higher price point than an R5, I think for me this camera is just not the ideal solution. It would work very well obviously for filming myself in the studio, but I'm afraid where I also need the camera as a true hybrid camera in the field for taking photos on a second lens and also doing handheld video, the R5C actually seems to be not as well suited as a normal R5. So what's my solution to solving the overheating problem in the studio? Because I can tell you it's very annoying. And for now, I've decided to buy a Ninja 5 external recorder that will allow me to record much longer times onto the recorder in a also easier to edit format. And I've ordered one on B&H the other day. They were on a special, so that should arrive within a week or two, hopefully. And I'll let you know how I go with that, because hopefully that solves a lot of the problems, and it will also allow me to much easier and much nicer show you now what it looks like through my viewfinder. I usually use my phone to record the viewfinders, whereas now I'll be able to record it in like a proper 4K frame filling size. So hopefully that's something that will add to my videos as well. But the main reason I bought it is really to solve those overheating issues on longer videos. And I've said for years overheating wasn't an issue, and it was never an issue until it became an issue, unfortunately, when I live in hotter climates now. So really needed a different solution, and I hope that will solve these issues. So that's it for today. Make sure to let me know in the comments how you like this shorter new format, and also what you think of the new lenses. Also make sure to check out my masterclass and my pro sets down there in the description that will help you to edit your images with ease and make them stand out from the crowd. Other than that, please give me a like for the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next video very soon. Bye!